Hey guys, Music Breakdown here with a new series, The Random CD Project. What this is I'm going to a record store, closing my eyes, and randomly selecting a few used CDs that I find. That's all it is. And then I'm going to review them. I'm going to listen to them, and I'm going to review them. And the first one that I picked out, once again at random, was The Cult, a self-titled album by The Cult. Apparently an English rock band. I have never heard of them before this, and when I looked them up a little bit, it seems like if I had heard of them, this would not have been the album I would have picked first. Only for the reason that this was a stylistic change in their discography, to try to hop on the grunge scene. I believe this came out in 94. So it's a little late, but hopping on the grunge scene, taking the grunge train, you know, like a lot of bands did. You know, I'm not sure if this band has any amazing albums, if all their albums are crap. I don't know, haven't listened to them. Maybe I'll check them out. But this is what I've heard. So it's pretty clear listening to this album that this is not the band's original sound. And that's really just for one main reason. It's not because they do the sound poorly, because they really don't. At worst, it's only average. At worst, it's only average. It's not awful, it's not bad, it's not like fucking Bush or something. It's pretty basic stuff. No, the reason I say that this is obviously not their original sound is because of the vocalist. His voice is not a grunge voice, right? You think grunge voices, you get a pretty distinct idea. When you think of generic grunge voices, you think of some of the most awful examples of rock vocalists, like your Chad Kroger, you know, stuff like that. Or maybe fucking, I don't know, Sully Erna? No, not Sully Erna. But you know what I mean. But this is not anywhere near what the archetype for a grunge voice is. It's not a Kurt Cobain, it's not an Eddie Vedder, it's not a whatever the fuck else. It's not. It sounds like a glam voice. More than anything, like a glam rock voice. And I think this may actually be the record's biggest flaw. I don't know if I wouldn't like this guy's voice in their other work. I could definitely see it working, and I believe that they've made post-punk albums, and if that's true, this is a voice that I could see suiting that genre. But right now, it kind of sounds like putting Ian Curtis, you know, in a Nirvana song. It's a little out of place. He does bring a lot of energy to his performance. It's certainly not bad. I just find it very boring. There's not much grit to his voice, and given that the guitars are very, you know, rough, noisy at times, very distorted, it just seems like his voice doesn't quite fit. But like I said, his performance is definitely high energy. He is definitely trying. It's certainly not bad, just bland. Certainly not the worst problem that a record like this could have. The production on this album is alright. It's not great, but it's a little more than average for sure. The guitars do sound good. They definitely have a distinct crunch to them that I think grunge guitars should, but at the same time, sometimes they feel a little stiff. Like on the chorus to Coming Down, just a little... They don't feel very fluid. Like if you listen to the guitars on a Nirvana record, especially on Nevermind, they sound very fluid, almost watery. I don't know, it's a sound that a lot of grunge bands tried to replicate but never quite got. And I'm not saying that this record was trying to go for that, but I am saying that it probably would have suited it better. Especially because the same song I mentioned, Coming Down, actually does kind of have that sound in the guitars in the verses. Which, now that we're talking about that track, the verses of this track are pretty good, and I like, but the hook of this track is very, very weak. Overall, it's an okay song, but, you know, not great. Certainly not worth 6 minutes of your time, but it's okay. I would say that sometimes the album even sort of leans to a noise rock direction, Not in any big way. I mean, this is not a noise rock album, but they do play with feedback a little bit. So there is some other interest here. This is not your generic grunge record, which is good. There are songs here that I like a lot. The opening track is very good. It opens with this odd bass line, very disjointed drum pattern. It's a strange way to open the album, but it is interesting, which pulls you in, which is nice. Generally, when you listen to your generic grunge album, it'll open in just the most boring way possible. You know, throw you right into some shitty riff or something. You know, setting you up for disappointment. This album definitely sets you up for a bit of a different experience, which is nice, even though it doesn't exactly come through with this for the rest of the album. But what really gets me on this track is the chorus, which I think is just fucking explosive. It's an explosive hook. Because you translate from this section into just this bombastic, loud, angry chorus. And something about shouting the word fuck before a loud guitar riff just kind of brings out the angst in me, you know? It is exciting. This song is not without its flaws. I think that while I did commend them on the odd verses, it is a little messy. But overall, it's a good opening track. I think Black Sun is a very good song as well. No, not Black Hole Sun, Black Sun. They both came out the same year. I don't know if this came out before or after Super Unknown, but I hope this wasn't just ripping off Black Hole Sun. Anyway, this is one of the longer tracks in the album. There are a few 6-minute tracks here, a few 5-minute tracks here. Barely anything goes under 4 minutes. We'll get to that in a bit. But I think Black Sun's pretty good. You know, it has a good build, although I think that while it is building, some of the moments get a bit boring, especially towards the beginning. It kind of feels like it's dragging, but towards the end of this song, it starts to feel worth it. It definitely pays off. It gets louder, it gets more energetic, it gets more exciting. There's certainly energy to this song that none of the other songs quite have in the same way. You know, because this song starts quiet, then gets loud by the end. It's not your generic quiet, loud dynamic that a lot of these types of albums have. So I do commend them on that. And the closing track here, I think, is great. I think it's the best song here. It's got, I would say, a bit of a similar build to Black Sun. It's not exactly the exact same dynamic, but it's close. And it's good. It's very, very good. The one thing holding it back is, once again, the guy's voice. I just sort of think it's a bit lacking. But on this song, it's not too much of a problem. It's a great closer to the album. It certainly leaves you feeling satisfied, which is good. And that's really something that the album needed, because it's fucking long. It's a long album. It's too long, honestly. You know, it's a little over an hour. Not the worst thing in the world, you know, plenty of amazing albums go over an hour. It's just that this album is not amazing. It's not even really all that good. Besides the tracks I mentioned, there aren't very many other standouts. A lot of the tracks are just sort of the worst one being Universal You, with some really cringeworthy lyrics like, all God's daughters, they got ass, they got class. Yeah, it's pretty shit, but, you know, for the most part, it's just kind of like, whatever, you know? It's fine, it's certainly not bad. If somebody put it on, I wouldn't immediately turn it off. But there's nothing particularly interesting about it, and, you know, that definitely holds it back. And to be over 60 minutes, it drags it out. It's just, it doesn't feel quite as cohesive as I think it could have, because it just runs on for too long with too much mediocrity. I mean, most of the tracks are above average, mind you. This is by no stretch of the imagination a bad album. It's not even really just an average album. It's above average. It's decent, but, you know, for a decent album to last this long, it better have some real fucking highlights, and it doesn't have very many. But, you know, I was moderately impressed by this, picking this up, doing a little research into it. I was expecting this to really suck, or at the very least just be completely boring, bland shit. But it is better than that, for sure. And I do like it, so, you know, that's gotta say something. So, I would give The Cult, self-titled, a decent 6.5 out of 10. It comes close to being a good album. It definitely comes close, but it also comes close to being a bland album. And it goes on for too long. However, I could see myself listening to it again. There are a few highlights. I moderately enjoyed it. Yeah, so, shit.
Abby Hoffman was so young. Don't you know your king is young?
Yeah, so that's all for this review. The next random CD project will be on this album, How Hollow Heart by Dead Voices on Air. This one's really fucking obscure from what I've seen, so cool to get my hands on this. And you can expect me to talk about this one soon. Bye, guys.